Welcome back, everybody, to Ravenstar's Witching Hour. I'm Solaris BlueRaven, and I'm here with my very special guest, Dan Willis. And Dan, you with me?
I am.
All right. It's a pleasure to have you on tonight, by the way. So thank you again for joining us. It's always a good conversation with you. And, we touched on the California mandatory vaccines. And, I don't understand for the life of me why the masses over there, why are they complying with that? Why isn't there any kind of a protest? I mean, nothing's going on. Lack of concern,
Yeah, especially when there's so much information that, the effects of these vaccines, and the fact that, you have to consider, the listeners are pretty savvy on this network. They know that 9/11 was an inside job, and that, right after that lie, they had several actions, the military commands, the Homeland Security, the department, the NDAA came out of that. All these different control elements. In fact, one of the things about after the 9/11 event, they had the anthrax event, and then Bush started Project Bioshield, which billions of taxpayers' dollars goes to this deal with the pharmaceutical industries, which partially made at this Nazi bioweapons lab that was run by Heinrich Himmler off the coast of Germany. And they're creating all these experimental vaccines, billions of them, and to be used in a case of a national emergency. And just recently, about a month or so ago, there was this one congressman that said, hey, the military and law enforcement, they're being trained to give, these mandatory vaccinations, and the Supreme Court has ruled because of the nature of it, they're therefore unsafe, and therefore people, if you die by getting one of these injections, the pharmaceutical companies are completely, faultless, and so that it's like this ability to make a lot of money that they have no risk, and then you have all these vaccines stockpiled, just waiting for a national emergency where people will be, according to the Project Bioshield, that the military and law enforcement can give forced vaccination. So you have to wonder about the whole. You have to look back at the history of these people. Back in 1933, they were planning on setting up, death camps to get rid of undesirables, according to their eugenics philosophy.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, they don't even have to do that now. Nowadays, and I've said this before, all they have to do is hit people with the array system, with the artificial intelligence, and they're in a camp, they're in a prison, they're in a mental prison, a psychological prison, because that hits them on all levels of psychotronic warfare with the artificial telepathy and mind control and programming, which means they can be compromised in their homes or wherever they are. They don't need to be taken away anymore. This is the new array system I was talking about that's being deployed. This is the Black Beast, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, that I've been talking about, the Black Umbrella program for many, many years now. Of course, being inducted into that program I went through in 2004 with the artificial telepathy and having, a lot of anomalous signals left over and still there. So I can vouch for the technology, and I know it's there. I know what they use it for. I know how they interrogate. I know how they try to brainwash. And like I said, when you see this thing happening and unraveling before our eyes, people have been warned. And if you don't believe in this information, it's too bad, because it's true. And the technology is there. You can look at DARPA and watch them. You can go and check out the military and watch and see what they've been doing with artificial telepathy. I call it synthetic telepathy. I mean, this is real data. This is real information. It's being deployed. It's been I've been a test pilot for the information and the technology, and I can tell you where it goes. And I'm telling you, man, it's a dark avenue. But it's all about control manipulation. It really is, Dan.
It totally is. It totally is. And that's what they've been focusing on. Alan Dulles started, the MKULTRA mind control program and all the other mind control programs that branched off of that. And that was all primitive stuff. Mm-hmm. Since then, they've developed technologies that, surpass that. But, the one thing they were afraid of, when they rewrote the textbooks and everything like that, one thing they wanted to keep was the occult connection of the Nazis, because the Nazis went all through India and Tibet. They raided all the libraries. They had all incredible occult libraries with all this information. Occult, as you and I know, just means hidden or not obvious. And the average guy out there working and trying to make a living doesn't have the luxury to try to research all this stuff. They're just trying to function on this planet. And so,
right. Distracted and busy.
It's
not
unless some kind of unusual situation, like all of a sudden, because I'm one of the top secret witnesses that went to Washington, and I had firsthand experiences with CIA agents, basically at the higher levels of the mainstream media, sanitizing out a solution to get off of oil and nuclear for over 60 years. Jeez. But they cut that out. Something's definitely wrong if that happens. So back in 1957, what Professor Hans Isaac, the chairman of the psychology department at the University of London, wrote this letter. It said there was like 30 major universities all over the world and highly respected silencing what we knew about the powers of human consciousness in the textbooks, and to take it out of everything with sociology and psychology, because they were very concerned that if we there's a whole lot more of us than there is of them, and if we pull our collective consciousness together. See, one thing they try to bet on is that us going into fear and panic. When the USS, the precursor to the CIA, was run by General Wild Bill Donovan, a Knight of Malta, he was trained at the Tavistock Institute under what he called, quote, full spectrum dominance over all aspects of the target population's interpretive and decision-making faculties by employing all of the techniques of mass communication propaganda and the all-important component, the calculated application of terror, unquote. So this is something that, Tavistock originally started back in the 1920s, and it was based on the guys that were coming back from World War I that was totally, post-traumatic stress syndrome. They didn't have that term back then, but they were looking at how to restructure a person's thinking and control people, and it all comes back to part of this Nazi fallback plan to infiltrate into the United States, use worldview warfare, of which they effectively infiltrated and used the mainstream media, starting in 1950 with Operation Mockingbird by Allen Dulles, and employing, of course, non-official covered journalists working for the CIA in order to engineer the consent of the masses through the news media. And then the movies, starting in 1951, Project Dove, which was revealed in a briefing to Reagan by William Casey, another Knight of Malta, by the way. The Knight of Maltas are also, kind of connected into the Vatican, and you have to wonder about those connections too.
Well, that Pope is just unbelievable, some of the stuff he's doing. And I don't know why people even follow him. He's calling for a new world order. I don't know if you heard that one.
Oh, what was that again?
Said the Pope has been calling for a new world order.
Oh, yeah.
You have to wonder Jesuit
about these
fraud.
connections.
Oh, yeah. No, he's just bad news. I mean, for people, and I have nothing against people, and, if the people aren't bad, obviously the Catholics aren't bad. I mean, they love Jesus. That's great. But this guy is toxic, and he's a liar. And for anybody to follow that Vatican, you know how corrupt that place is. I mean, it just ticks me off beyond words to watch these leaders in the illusion of power. They are in the illusion of power, and the only reason they have power is because people have delegated that power to them. But if we refuse to give them their power, they don't have any. And so I have to ask myself, why are you people so complacent? Why are you allowing your world to go to hell in a handbasket? And of course, Dan, we can't carry the world on our shoulders. We can come out here and put the information out and the truth out, but really it takes each individual to stand up and do something about it in some form or another. And even if it's through consciousness, they have to make a change. unless they just want to go down the sewer. I don't mean to go on a rant here, but go ahead.
The church has been concerned about this whole extraterrestrial issue for a long time. In 1952, a top secret, MJ12 document that's on my website. Everything that I've researched, I base it on, the hundreds of witnesses and the collaborating documentation that goes along with all this. I mean, there's a lot of disinformation all over the internet, but you start piecing together, over 500 witnesses and their collaborating documentation that's been authenticated, and it starts to paint a pretty clear picture if you start digging. It's hard to vet absolutely everything, but you can hit pretty well, at least at 90%. And just the way I like to look at it, I like to look at things as indicators. Don't come to an absolute conclusion. In fact, don't trust anything that we're saying on this show tonight. Do your own research. But in 1952, Cardinal Spellman was one of the panel members that actually wrote a defense plan because the church was concerned about containment so that the ET reality would not affect the religious beliefs. So the church was all in bed with this secret government cabal, which our legal constitutional government completely separated from and no longer had jurisdiction back when Rockefeller restructured Eisenhower's administration, and Kennedy tried to get it back, but Allen Dulles set up an assassination directive, and that was it after that, and they pretty much have full control after they murdered Kennedy. But what I was going to say, I wanted to jump forward on that. I've kind of wrote down a bunch of little notes here and there to try to keep myself on track. Because, really to wrap your head around this whole thing is, it takes time, to, the more you get into it, the more you research and see that there's credible information behind this. It's like unlearning years and years of indoctrinated programming that you've been falsely led down this reality. Watching even with Project Dove, they started modifying all the scripts of all the science fiction movies. The first one was fairly innocent, The Day the Earth Stood Still, one of my favorite movies. And then they started going into the evil alien plots, which, we've seen so many movies come out of Hollywood where the same old theme. Evil aliens are coming down, to kill us all and take over the planet. That's pretty much a common theme of so many movies, coming out of Hollywood. And, you look at since 1983, they consolidated all the corporations down to about 5, controlling just about everything you see and hear, magazines, television, radio. And so they have the consolidation down pretty good. And also the people in the top media agencies, they're usually agency people, read, CIA and NSA people. Mm-hmm. One media expert by the name of Hal Becker once said, and you have to wonder about this statement, because if you look at television, all of the scenes that you see of people killing and hurting each other, everybody's got a gun on just about every channel, and you're starting to see more and more scenes of torture, people being tortured. And Hal Becker said, quote, "I know the secret of making the average American believe anything I want him to. Just let me control television. You put something on the television and it becomes reality. If the world outside of the TV set contradicts the images, people start trying to change the world to make it like the TV set images." You've heard of copycat crimes, and, many people have, gone in to see a movie that's like emotionally stirring, when, like, say, Star Wars came out, or or Star Trek, or any kind of movie or Western. People feel like they're a Jedi Knight or a cowboy, or they're a war hero, or something. People naturally try to connect what they see, because you have this incredible medium of sound and vision working together to create in your mind without your mind having to do any work. It creates all of these possible realities. And so our subconscious minds are being fed, all of these different, realities. I mean, you have all these crime dramas. Every way, which way you can dig up a crime drama, they've done it.
Right, it's in training the masses. Literally, they're being calibrated for violence. It's a form of mind control. There's no doubt about it. There's one thing I also wanted to touch on, and not to derail you or anything, but I don't know if you're familiar with this. You probably have seen it on the internet or Facebook, but they were talking about the AI dreams, artificial intelligence, the dream of the virtual dream, how machines dream. And they were showing these distorted images of things that were just really bizarro and kind of disturbing, animals and a mix of a lot of different images and kind of like all kind of colliding together, because that's how they would assess a machine or an AI dreaming. And I'll say one thing about this, because I've been interfaced with artificial intelligence and the synthetic telepathy. That is absolutely correct. Because when they do things like that to any host, like myself, for example, or a test pilot, you will not have normal dreams anymore. You will see things that are hideous, that look like a hell that you've never, ever experienced or walked through. And I just want to give people a heads up on that, because once you get plugged into the transhumanism program, you will never have a dream again based on higher consciousness. And I want to warn you ahead of time. And I didn't want to change the subject, but I want to bring that up. Yeah, it is. I know it. I mean, you're talking to somebody who's actually been there. So I'll say point blank, man, yeah, it's all bad news. And we should use the internet as a tool of investigation and research, obviously using discernment. But what they're doing is creating so much crap. There's so much disgusting stuff in here. There's so many disgusting people. It's a virtual cesspool, and you really have to decode everything and look at it from a higher perspective. So.
Oh yeah, it's totally true. Everybody, a lot of people have a vivid imagination, and you see all this stuff, that you're dumped into your mind of this evil killing and stuff. It's easy to play scenarios in your head. And so long as you have fear within you, you're easily manipulated, and you can't connect with your higher aspects so long as you're in a state of fear.
Right.
And, the evil alien movies, that whole thing was based on a future false flag, ET hoax evasion, which Werner von Braun on his deathbed testimony, and also a leak Iron Mountain report in which LBJ, Lyndon B. Johnson, hit the roof and had it suppressed for all time. I like to read out of a quote out of the report from Iron Mountain, that page 51, that says, "It has been hotly argued that such a menace would offer the last best hope for peace, etc., by uniting mankind against the danger of destruction by creatures from other planets or from outer space. Experiments have been proposed to test the credibility of an all-out war invasion threat. It is possible that a few of the more difficult to explain, quote, flying saucer incidences have of recent years were in fact early experiments of this kind, unquote." And on page 63, it says, I did a little searching on this to try to see what I could find, and this is kind of interesting because it correlates with von Braun's testimony that the last threat, first it would be the Soviets, which was a lie because they brought in the Nazi general, which was lying about the estimates. That cost it like $8 trillion. And then the next threat would be terrorists, 9/11. That was a lie. That cost over $6 trillion. Then it would be asteroids. And the final one would be a hoaxed extraterrestrial threat in order to build up this military industrial complex, which Eisenhower tried to warn us about the dangers of these unwarranted influences, and only an alert, knowledgeable citizenry that takes nothing for granted could protect our future liberties and freedoms, because they were planning this hoax extraterrestrial measure. Page 63 says the unarmed forces variant amended to include unlimited powers of economic sanction might conceivably be expanded to constitute a credible external medicine. menace, rather. Excuse my all over the place here tonight. Development of an acceptable threat from outer space, presumably in conjunction with space research surrogate for economic control, appears unpromising in terms of credibility. So they were looking at this. This was back in the early 70s that this was happening.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And today they're trying to work with perception management.
Brainwashing. That's a nice way to say brainwashing, isn't it?
Yeah, well, exactly. It's basically being lied to. Yeah. The former Minister of Defense, Paul Hellyer, gave us a warning that we're in grave danger from enemies within, basically speaking directly about the Nazi cabal with the banking elite that has these plans that we've lost control of back during the Eisenhower era. And, the military-industrial complex had the strategy for continual war. In other words, create one boogeyman after another for continual profit and control.
Yep.
And
nothing but drama. It's drama and distraction. That's all it is. That's all it's ever been. Have you noticed? Everything is a crisis. Everything is an issue. Jeez, it's unbelievable.
Yeah. And they'll have the music, dun 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 dun. dun. It's like a movie. They try to create this this movie, and they keep us. While they have a breakaway civilization that they funneled in trillions and trillions of dollars, advanced technology, a secret space program, they've got all this stuff. In the meantime, they keep us on, nuclear and oil. After a decade of working with scientists and flying around the planet, meeting with scientists and inventors, with Professor Loiter, we set up a corporation, Advanced Energy Research Organization, Incorporated, where I met with one inventor down in the Dominican Republic. CIA met with him the previous day. They said, "This works, you're dead." I couldn't imagine all these scientists and things have had their laboratories cleaned out, SWAT teams coming in. Many of them received, and some of them were murdered. Many of them received these national security order, which is a gag order, which means you can't release your invention that could get us off of oil or nuclear. And this is all through the national security apparatus running through the U.S. Patent Office and a special application warning system program that automatically issues to any inventor that comes up with anti-gravity, free energy, anything that looks like it is out of the norm. Basically gets slapped one of these things. And so they've been keeping us technologically suppressed while they profit on these industries that they're heavily vested into, while they take all this super advanced technology for themselves in this completely broke away civilization. And they're trying to control the management. I mean, Snowden leaked the GCHQ documents where they're having armies of sock puppets, shills, and trolls going across the internet trying to control the perception because people are starting to put it together. Google is now going on board where, they'll control the truth algorithms. In other words, 9/11 was done by the guys with the box cutters, and eat your GMOs, they're good for you, will appear on the top of the search engines. Anything that's contrary to that will not appear. NSA with their up there in Bluffdale, Utah, with their yottabytes of storage and quantum computing processing capability that's incapable, totally capable of profiling every single person. Now, you have to think about the 270 military people that they purged out. You can see that, they profiling these people, whether or not they'll fit with the agenda or not. Mm-hmm. And, both Snowden and, William Binney, what's a 25-year or more code breaker for the NSA. So, they don't do anything with terrorists. It's all about controlling the population.
Right. They're creating the terrorists. We all know that. They're the ones doing it. They're orchestrating the whole freaking thing. That's what ticks me off so bad. I mean, the CIA orchestrates every single terrorist event. And yet they sit back and then, then FBI does damage control. I mean, come on. I mean, we know what's going on here. And I must say that it's so frustrating when you see this and you talk about national security. But I think in the end game, I think the final end game, because they've gone out of their way to control and manipulate to such an extent and to destroy things, we could have had a wonderful world had people just had free energy, had we taken the patents and ran with the information and the higher consciousness and let these inventors and these people who are creative do their thing. We would have had no illnesses, no cancers, no Fukushima, and yet you see all this BS going on here. And I tell you what, these guys have a big burden to carry on their backs. They've done a lot of damage to this world and the future generations, and they are held accountable. And I don't care if they believe it or not. They are held accountable by universal law, and they better get that in their freaking brains without me going on a rant here. But I'm very annoyed because we've been gypped. We've been ripped off, and so future generations are lost because of them, because of their selfishness.
Yeah, you're 100% correct. We could have a beautiful world, a beautiful planet. We don't need to have all these ongoing wars, all this destruction to our ecosystem, and they're holding back on the technologies that could stop all this. It's sad.
And the thing is, Dan, it's not their technology. I mean, where do they get off confiscating information that doesn't necessarily belong to them to begin with? Inventors, Tesla technology has been weaponized. You saw how he was, completely he died destitute and ripped off, and they took all his information and weaponized it across the board. Now we have a weaponized world because of what they've done with his technology. He gave us a gift of free energy. They've abused and misused it. And yeah, you're right. We do have a breakaway society that's literally sitting there with big bucks in the black, unlimited bank accounts, misusing psychotronic hardware, working with artificial intelligence, upgrading their own people to transhumanism, and screwing everybody else on the timeline. And I'm getting ticked off about it myself. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to get annoyed here, guys.
We all definitely.
Go ahead, Dan.
Definitely, it's something to, but you know what? It's turning around. The global awakening is happening. I like to talk on the extraterrestrial topic just for a little bit. Back in 1947, when General Twining was doing a report for Truman and everybody, they found out that there was a symbiotic consciousness interface between the operators, the ETs, and the craft. And so there's this interface that they do with matter, and the functioning of the craft is actually alive and interacting with them. And you hear of the ETs. They, as far as the reality that we have, they can float people up through ceilings and go through walls, and there's rumors that they have these tall whites and working with the Nazis and the U.S. government, and I have no way of validating that, but you hear a lot of whistleblowers. But when I was working with Dr. Marcel Vogel, one of the things in the laboratory, we were under electron microscope, we were looking at these metal samples that were given to the Swiss farmer, Billy Meyer, who was ongoing with the Palladian beings. And he had wrote an enormous amount of material that was given by the Palladians. By the way, we were able to establish that it was no known process that we knew how to do on Earth, some type of cold fusion process that was done in the metal. So I actually handled those samples back then. But in a conversation that Billy Meyer was having with the Palladian being Ptah, Meyer was saying that something should be said about the fact that human beings on Earth are causing many terrible things in catastrophe themselves. You have to think about all the disaster movies, we're seeing that they keep putting through Hollywood. Not only with regard to global warming, but also because they collectively direct their powers of thoughts and their powers of subconsciousness so mightifully on terrible things and catastrophes. This was translated from German, by the way. A part of this are also the false claims and lies by fear and panic mongers, as well as doomsday prophets, religions and their sects, etc., who focus on those human beings who are susceptible to this, whereby terrible things and catastrophes then actually come true. Nowadays, through the internet, it's even worse than in the past, when evil news, fears, and doomsday tales, as well as other absurdities, were only spread by religious sects, doomsday prophets, newspapers, journals, and through the radio. A majority of human beings constantly occupy themselves with dreadful things that are prophesied, like, Jade Helm, different things, by alarmists and conspiracy theorists, through which they terrify those people who are susceptible to it. And the more people believe in this nonsense and build it up to a delusion within themselves and in the environment, the more mightyful the power of the related common thoughts become, until they become the determining might and trigger and cause the thought-up catastrophe or terrible things. The might of thoughts brings about everything, so to speak, and in fact, the more certain, the more the powers of thoughts of many people unite in the same cause. This means that what human beings nurture and maintains in his thoughts, it inevitably fulfills itself. And the more human beings focus on something specific with their powers of thoughts, which could or shall turn out, the more certain it will actually come true. This refers to everything and everyone, or rather everything that is conceivable. Therefore, also to factors of nature, which, when influenced by the enormous powers of human thoughts, can trigger immense catastrophes. And Ptah, the Palladian, responds back saying, an indisputable fact. So, you know, I mean, you look at on the YouTube and all the stuff that's going on, like with Jade Helm and moving all these military things around us, you know, it says, I think it's important not to go into fear. It's like situations like that are going on, but rather, you know, stand up for truth and hold people accountable. Yep. And know these situations are going through a transformation as the global awakening is happening right now.
Well, it's all collapsing. It's all imploding. And actually, that's not a bad thing. We're seeing evil surface. Where the good side of this is we're seeing who's on what side. We're seeing it all. We're seeing all the cards played out. They all have their cards on the table. We see the corruption. We see the cabals. We see the agenda. And we stay in control. We maintain our power on a higher consciousness level. And we deactivate their artificial intelligence assault programs that are designed to take over the masses. That's my take.
Yeah, you know, I think they want us to feel in fear and feel disempowered. The last thing they want us to know is to understand the power of consciousness and how we can collect. Mm-hmm. I mean, collectively, you know, alter. We can re-engineer. We can counter-engineer what they're engineering, because there's a power greater in truth than there is of a lie. Because the power of truth has a way of resonating inside of everyone. And as we talked earlier, the holographic reality of which we're all part of this collective consciousness, each one of us is contributing to that collective reality. And it was funny, my wife Rebecca and I were watching this movie, Tomorrowland, and one of the things they talk about at the end is that the people realized that they could change the reality according to collectively what they agreed upon. You know, Disney coming out with little tidbits here and there. Yeah, I have to wonder, you know, about, you know, there's little truths in sci-fi movies, you know, like the Prime Directive, that advanced races don't want to interfere with the evolution of a species. In other words, they're not going to come down and solve our problems for us, which we need to take responsibility for ourselves. But at the same time, I don't think it would hurt to give them permission to help by asking that they possibly show up and give us a hand.
Well, they're our ancestors. I mean, Dan, the bottom line is we are star people. And this is what I was talking about. Our celestial heritage is not from this earth. And yet people, and I mean, I know people might argue that, but I'm telling you point blank, I know that we are star beings, and I know that we are not, our essence of origin is not from here. We don't belong here. We don't belong on this planet. End of story. And when we access our celestial heritage, which is our celestial ancestry, and we have connections to those lineage and species out there through contactees or whatever, yes, we do have the power to bring them in. Absolutely. If we're being violated and harmed by these subhumans on this planet that are designed to control and manipulate or try to switch off or shut off our DNA, or switch us down and not allow us to ascend in consciousness, absolutely they can intervene. And that's what national security is terrified of. And that's why they've been tracking contactees and MyLabs and everything else. So, I mean, don't get me started, because I know I've been like fired up tonight, but I'll tell you, you know, I see it for what it is. And then I look at the Vatican. Of course they're terrified of extraterrestrials. They want to baptize the extraterrestrials. Why? Because off-world species won't put up with their lies and deception. They'll take one look at the Pope and see he's a prophet of lies. They'll look at him and say, you're nothing. You're not a holy man. I mean, this is what it is. It's seeing through multidimensional sight. We see it. We know it. And so do they. And that's why they're terrified on this timeline. And I'm telling you, I know I'm right. I mean, I know I'm right. So.
Oh yeah. They see we become naked in front of them.
Yeah, it's like, you know what? It's like, look into the heart of mankind,
thoughts.
Dan. When Prime, whatever you want to call the creator source energy, looks into the heart of man, what is he going to see? I'll tell you what he's going to see: corruption, lies, deception, disgusting behavior. I mean, obfuscation of sacred data. I mean, I can go on and on. Mind control, psychotronic warfare, harming others, mutilation, sexual mutilation. Let's start with Islam, shall we? I can go on the list of what disgusting behavior is going on this planet that needs to shift now and not tomorrow. And we have people in the illusion of power contributing to the problem and not the solution. So this is one of the reasons I'm here on the radio, and I'm sure this is one of the reasons you're here. And I certainly appreciate you being on the show because you bring a lot to the table on a level of higher consciousness. I'm more of a spiritual warrior, and I get very pissed off because I know what the technology is, and I've been through a lot of hard areas of psychotronic battlefields. But I'll tell you, man, this all needs to change, and it will through consciousness if people understand and let go of the wheel and stop trying to be pulled into the mainstream media and all that crap television they're watching.
They're been engineering consent and wanting to put us into fear, and they work by ego a lot too. It's like they play on people's egos. I think the whole ET connection thing is that they definitely read your thoughts. I had an experience in the mountains where I felt a contact coming out of the sky, and I reached my hand out and I said, "Is somebody out there?" It was like so strong, and a ship came down and started flashing different lights, and I called my girlfriend. We were camping out way out in the mountains off the beaten path and kind of freaked, but I wanted them to come in closer, but it kind of gave me a validation that because when I reached my hand out and asked to see is somebody out there, and the ship came down and it started bobbing up and down as in a yes and flashing colors, it kind of gave me a confirmation that yes, they do hear your thoughts. Dr. Greer goes on these CSETI expeditions where they use the CE5 protocol, basically remote viewing, and they've had a lot of experiences bringing things in. They don't use the electromagnetic spectrum like SETI does, for the telescopes and all that stuff. They definitely hear your thoughts. And so, definitely I go out on the balcony every so often and I just send it out there and, ask, please help mankind, so we can join the rest of the galactic families and civilizations and help us, get out of this interference by this controlling cabal on this earth, so humanity can reach unimpeded its technical and spiritual maturity, which they've been holding, with the church and the government and all the mind control stuff in order to keep us suppressed. Because again, there's more of us than there is of them, and so they have to use every trick in the book in order to indoctrinate us into this worldview warfare of which we have this perception of reality, but it's a lie. It's not a complete picture, and it's being manipulated. I think the power of visualization is very, very powerful. I was going to play a clip, but we've been talking through 2 hours here pretty quick, so I'll just refer to it. If you go to my articles on there as well, www.thewebmatrix.net, there is a visualization called Imagine This, and it's just basically I'll take you through. It's what's happening right now, but it's these children in the future looking back at the challenges mankind had to do with this cabal group, and that through the alternative media, this thanks Revolution Radio, support that, we have this global awakening. People start putting together things, and all of a sudden, all the deception started appearing transparent, and they were asking for amnesty, and all of a sudden all these technologies started to be slowly released, and we started to clean up the planet, and it's a beautiful ending, of what happens. And I see that as a very real possibility, and I believe the universe wants us to move toward our higher spiritual evolution and not be trapped in a lie like there is on this planet.
Right. Well, we're designed to ascend. That's the bottom line. I mean, we're not designed to be held back. We're designed to keep going and ascending, and I know that. And that's one of the reasons I have an issue with these people trying to control and manipulate here to such an extent, poisoning everybody. They're just poisoned completely. It's like a brain virus. I mean, literally sickening. But I think you made a good point insofar as meditation and bringing in higher consciousness design to integrate onto the world. I think that is huge, because that's how you change reality, as we all know. And of course, they like to run interference patterns. And I will say I'm well aware that they are running with all the satellites and the black satellite technology and the array systems. They have a huge amount of scrambling being done right now, array systems and interference patterns being run deliberately to confuse people psychically. You talk about the natural telepathy. Yes, that's true. Now they have the artificial telepathy being deployed, which they can use and remotely access people. And it will trick them into thinking they're talking to an ET when they're talking to the AI. That's huge. And people need to be aware of that.
Yeah, they have all these technologies that augment our normal faculties, to use. In fact, anyway, I won't go into one of the experiences. Werner von Braun had a device back in this was back in the 70s that they could communicate thoughts to someone remotely. While he was on his deathbed, dying of cancer, he was able to communicate. So yeah, they've got the technologies, and even the Russians. The Russians are way ahead on a lot of stuff. But I don't sell books or make any money at doing any of this. It just really pisses me off that we've been born into this lie. I think people hate being lied to.
Well, you know what? We expected more from mankind, and I guess the people in the illusion of power, we put them there for a reason, because we trust them enough to do the right thing. They're not doing the right thing. This goes for religious leaders, any leader, anybody who's been promoted in the illusion of power. These people in these covert intelligence agencies, they had an obligation not to be acting like imbeciles and doing what they're doing with an agenda based on mind control. They're not doing their jobs. This is what I mean by we have been screwed over. And it's not just about this timeline, Dan. You have to realize, since mankind showed up on the map, this kind of game playing has been going on and on and on and on. And I think what's happening here with the 2012, although people say nothing happened, I believe it is the end of mankind as we know it, because a lot's changed since the 2012 shift, energetically speaking. You may not see it, but it's here.
I agree. Yeah, it didn't happen like end of the world type of thing, but there was a total shift in the energy, and it's been exponentially increasing ever since that time. And and you can see it on the internet. You can see this global awakening happening from every which way possible. People are starting to put it together, and I think the cabal members are starting to panic.
They should. I hope they are, because I'll tell you what, they have accountability, and whether they realize it or not, they may say, "Oh, well, I'll ask for forgiveness on my deathbed, and it'll all be cool." Hell no. No, they have accountability by universal law. There's a universal protocol, and I want them to know that there is accountability for every single move they made on the chessboard that has been designed to control, manipulate, and harm and destroy this world or the people on it. Absolutely. So, and I'm really a hard ass when it comes to that stuff. Let me tell you, man, I'm like a Valkyrie. I'll go after him in the afterworld. You watch. But yeah. But what I've seen is a split between worlds on dimensional shifts. I mean, we have the full light universal consciousness design, which is starseed consciousness, higher consciousness beings on the world. And then we have these perverted, distorted creeps that are going into another spiral, which is basically just coarse linear programming in a false transhumanism agenda. And that's a dead zone. That's nowhere. So I suspect for people, you don't want to go into the dead zone. You want to stay higher on consciousness to navigate so we can move on to the next level. And I know that's going to happen through frequency. And I also know that people who have been plugged into transhumanism, the frequencies that are descending onto the world right now through the galactic core, whatever you want to call it, they're going to completely electrocute any implants or devices. So those people are kind of screwed unless they've done the spiritual work. And I do know that. Yeah. That's part of the ascension process. So I'm well aware that I trust spirit, I trust the multiverse, I trust source, the creator force energy, whatever you want to call it, that which is more divine than man could possibly comprehend. Not man's version of God, but the full light celestial design behind every cosmic multiverse out there. The intelligent energy, which we are all part of, we're all extensions of. That's our legacy, that's our heritage, Dan.
Yeah, it's, the transhuman compared to, love is the only method of evolution in this universe that, if all the manipulations, all the lies, all the suffering, all the not respecting life, not respecting this planet, not respecting human beings or different races or whatever, all of this is a direction that eventually will not create this incredible world that their breakaway civilization with all their super advanced goodies and technologies that they've funneled trillions of dollars into, and all this super advanced technology that they have for the chosen elite, that they feel entitled to that. How much greater would the world be that, real spiritual power comes from, helping humanity, not deceiving.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with you. Yeah, honesty is huge. And in a world where honesty is kind of scoffed at, which I can't believe, truth is like, oh, if you're truthful, boy, they go after you like I don't know what. But literally, that's where people want to be. They want to have integrity. True knights, if they want to call themselves knights, that's integrity, that's truth, that's higher consciousness. And I don't see it. So people who label themselves, the Queen over there in the UK, she's notorious for labeling people as knighted. They are not knights. There's nothing noble about these people at all. I mean, don't get me started with that whole area over there either. But, I believe the course of mankind, as destructive as it is right now, could have been avoided had people stepped up to higher consciousness, had they stopped being programmed, and had they taken a step outside of their greed and their egos and their vanity to look and see, how is this benefiting the world, or how is this benefiting mankind? And it's not. And I can use so many corporations as an example of what they've done. The people give them the money, the people buy their products, and then they turn around and screw the people. And the people aren't just people, they're star beings. These are off-world species integrated onto a planet. Why don't they look at it for what it really is? And now that scientists are just talking about, oh, we just discovered that, yeah, there's multiple dimensions. Well, no kidding, because everybody who's done mystery school teachings understands multidimensional consciousness. We all know there's an infinite design out there. And yet, you'll see it, and I know you know this, Dan, that the mainstream's trying to capitalize like they've discovered something. Excuse me, we've known about this since the beginning of man-made time. You see how that goes, right?
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
I'm
sorry, Dan. I know. Yeah. I'm just like.
Well, I live with my wife up here in the remote Siskiyou Mountains in southern Oregon. It's like it's pretty slowed down energy, So.
Oh, I know, you're so chill. I know I get fired up. I'm not a late
night person. So.
Actually, we're good balance tonight because I get all fired up and then you reset everything. That's good. I live up in the mountains too, but I'm really high energy. And plus I've been through, a lot of transitional stuff. I just see it for what it is, and I'm so frustrated because I see the majority of people in America right now not understanding. It seems to me like, I know there are a lot of people that are stepping up, but it seems to me like they just don't care, Dan. They just don't care. They're either brainwashed or complacent. I don't know which one it is. Are they lazy? I don't know. But it's going on, and I'm like, I should be off the planet then. Maybe I should just volunteer for another planet, Mars, because this is not a home for me. I cannot do this. I will not live in a society that's oppressed like this in 1984, George Orwell. And I don't expect everybody else to comply with it either.
Yeah, well, the people, people are innocent. They're basically a product of their indoctrination into this world and this planet, and they're a product of that. I mean, it's sad because they've basically dumbed down everybody. I mean, look at television, and look at the education system. Basically, it worked. This Nazi plan of worldview warfare to control our entertainment, our news, our mainstream media, our education. They've effectively infiltrated in, and
Well, all I can say is I hope
only
they're happy.
the NSA knows how many people are totally clueless and how many people are, with their profiling, with their quantum computers, knowing, how many people are jeopardizing their agenda by becoming awake.
Right.
But,
well,
I think,
well, go ahead.
you have to imagine a square root of 1%, 8,000 people. That's not very many people to affect the entire global collective consciousness.
Well,
So,
yeah.
Don't go into fear and keep visualizing.
And I will also say it only takes a small percentage, like you just said, on a higher frequency of consciousness to actually change the whole dynamic of everything. We can alter the world simultaneously overnight. And I think just being out here and being a voice is actually creating a lot of change and shifting. I will say something about NSA, not so intelligent agency. I understand why they're data mining. I understand why they're acquiring data, because they want to misuse it for psychotronic warfare later on down the road. If they want to target an individual, they'll have all the data stream of information down to voice print. You name it, every single bit of their information will be there to be deployed with an array system to psychotronically drive them and push them. And I understand that technology. I understand it very clearly. So that's something also to look at. But, we're getting close to wrapping this up in just a few minutes here. Well, actually, we have about 6 minutes plus or minus. But, Dan, it's been so wonderful to have you on with us tonight. It's always a pleasure when I have you on the show, because you have so much insight and spirituality. And it's really nice to talk to you and hear what you have to communicate.
It's I share that feeling with you as well.
And I know I've been fast forward today, and I'm not taking calls right now, so whoever's trying to call in, don't bother. I don't do that unless I tell you guys I'm taking a call. Don't call in. Otherwise, I'll block you. I'm the queen of blocking. But anyways, but I do want to thank everybody also for tuning in tonight. And of course, stay tuned for Shining Side Out with David Dunger and Becky coming up next to sailing on into the night from down under with their fabulous show, as they always do here at freedomslips.com. And let's just talk about a few things more uplifting. I know I've been fired up, and I have reason to be, and I'm sure a lot of other people do too. But let's talk about some things. What can people do in the immediate now to change and create a better reality, starting with themselves and then moving to the next level?
Good idea. Well, actually, this whole message is positive. I mean, you have to look at all the dark elements and put them together. But once you realize that there's an incredible potential right now that's unfolding right now before our eyes, of the entire world being transformed to the kind of reality that everybody in their heart wants to see, and that people are starting to become aware of the power of consciousness within them to be able to affect that reality, to know the wisdom of not going into fear about what's going on, but and not going into denial and ignoring what's going on in the world either, but looking at it and just know that it's going through its transformative process, and that this global awakening is going to transform the world. And it's something that I think everyone in their heart wants to see. They don't want to have war and suffering anymore. And I think it's an inevitable outcome for the human race to spiritually evolve and not be anything like it was of the past, of the dark history of genocides that have been done and everything. This is a time that was like no other. It's a whole different frequency. Mm-hmm. And we're now becoming aware of the powers of consciousness to be able to collectively change this reality to a much better world.
I agree with you. That's well said. We do have the support also. We do have the galactic support energies, the higher frequencies coming in from the galactic center. We do have an ascension process happening here, which is simultaneously through all planets and star systems. I mean, it's not just on this planet. It's actually everywhere. And we're probably calibrated to that to some degree, but a lot of people don't realize that we are being assisted through frequency. And although they're trying to run interference, it's kind of like, you can't go toe-to-toe with the multiverse. I mean, mankind's going to realize that he just can't be king of the hill anymore. He's going to have to step down and take a second seat to the creator force energy, which is the divine consciousness, higher being, whatever you want to call it. You just can't keep playing these games anymore at everybody else's expense and suffering. And I think that's what it boils down to. And you're right, fear is a program. It's nothing but a program. It's nothing. There's no truth behind it. It's a psychological game they play. But once you start fortifying through what I call light consciousness, higher consciousness, and integrating it in your body, that changes everything. You're fortified, and you can navigate because you understand your connection to source.
That's right. We can connect to the higher aspect of ourselves, and then we become a powerful force, to change the reality. Absolutely.
Right. And it sounds like, I mean, you pretty much have an optimistic viewpoint. I mean, I can just tell by talking to you that regardless of what you're experiencing from day to day, you guys stay in a really good frequency for higher consciousness. You and Rebecca both, I've noticed.
I have my times, sometimes it's challenging sometimes. You can see the dots connecting together, and, the whole Jade Helm kind of disturbed me a bit. And I'm seeing all these, practicing, and, they have the capability to make lists of people they want to get rid of and stuff like that, so your imagination can go crazy with all this stuff, so, but then again, I remind myself that, because as a tightrope, you have to be aware that you don't want to feed that reality, like Ptah, the Palladian, was saying. We want to see the global awakening, see the transformation, see the deceptions becoming transparent and transformed, and give our power to that, because what they want to do is have you get sucked into it. If you listen to Alex Jones and all the stuff going on and everything like that, it can get you really depressed and fearful and
well, it's bad news anyway you look at it. That's not
where we're going.
Right. It's a linear description of what's happening. And I can understand where he's coming from in his frustration and passion, because I get like that too. But I also know that we are immortal souls, that we incarnate here for a limited time in the illusion of time, which doesn't exist anyway, and that we incarnate, and we're actually from our essence of origin is from the multiverse and the galactic center and beyond. I mean, we are star beings, and I wish people would embrace that instead of saying, "Oh, I'm just a human." No, you're not. You're a star being, and you've been lied to since you were born onto the planet. They've been deceiving you. They've been programming you, and it's time to deprogram and step up. And I think that's what it boils down to.
Yes, and more of us are.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, we're all whistleblowers on this planet.
Well, I think we're more like sounding the horn, aren't we? I don't know if we're necessarily whistleblowers, or we're just having a universal sounding in resonance with the full light universe. We're just here to remind everybody that we're watching. And with that being said, thank you again, Dan. I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight, and have a great week.
All right, you too. Thank you so much, Solaris. All right, bye-bye.
Bye.